what great people that give and give and give to the community and the state. Please thank them with me for hosting this event tonight and everything else they do. You're such good people. And thank you, Melissa and Michael, for driving over from Meridian. I actually got to feed her as a little baby and maybe diaper. And you have turned into such a beautiful woman and wonderful children, very accomplished. I also want to recognize my own son, who is here with me tonight, and he is helping to manage my campaign, Will Hessman. And then two lifelong friends, Deb and Eric back here. We've literally traveled all over the world together as we worked on an education task force, creating lessons for landlocked Idaho kids about the world. And I was with Eric when he picked out that diamond that Deb is wearing. So really my heart is just full of gratitude to be here with all of you tonight and to talk about our most precious resource that Idaho has. Many think it's the gem state, but the true gem for Idaho is our children. And someone needs to be a voice for kids, and that's why I'm running. There are three major objectives to me running in this campaign, but at the top of those is a single word. What is the purpose of education? It's learning. It's learning. And too often we get caught up in grading and testing and seat time, and we forget that we want to find joy in learning. We often say schools should be playgrounds of learning. Fun, because it is fun to learn, isn't it? The three major objectives that we have in helping to turn around Idaho's bottom of the nation status are these. Number one, let's help students learn and increase their academic achievement. Now, obviously, there is a lot that goes along with that, and I would be happy to talk about that further in a moment. But first, let's talk about the second important component to what our job must be after this election. We know that children who have highly effective teachers are more successful in academics. How do we recruit the best teachers in our state? How do we, and I think this is more important, how do we keep them teaching? Sally, how many years did you teach?
37.
Who here is a teacher at some point in your life? Oh my goodness. Thank you for teaching. I couldn't believe the number of people who had over 20 years here tonight. Thank you for participating and being a voice for children in their lives. It's the important component to ensuring they learn. We are actually costing our state $6 million a year right now when we don't retain great teachers. That comes from the teacher pipeline report that was presented by the Board of Education. The third component, and this may be most important because everything else revolves around it. And honestly, I feel more strongly about it because of what I've experienced the last 3 years, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. The final component to that is somehow we have to create a way for increased pre-K opportunity for all Idaho kids. Those who can afford it, give that to their children. Those who want to keep them at home, that's great. There are many parents who are doing a fantastic job in preparing children with those early learning skills. There's one right there. But the truth of the matter is, many parents today, myself included, as a single parent for 7 years, I did not have the financial means to have my son in a preschool program, nor did I have the time to provide that for him. And that is happening for many of our Idaho parents today. We don't have to make it a mandatory option, but we can have it available for parents who desire it for their kids, and we know through research that it is part of best practices to help children learn. I want to talk for a moment about why this has become such an important matter for me. And some of you know that I've been serving on the Idaho Board of Correction for the past 3 years. I'm regularly visiting in the prisons and talking to our incarcerated folks there. 70% of them did not graduate from high school, nor did they get a GED. Families are turned upside down. And frankly, there's so much work we need to do to help them re-enter our society. It's not happening now. And 95% of those folks are going to come back into our neighborhood and live next door. When I talk to them and I hear their stories, nearly every single one with whom I visit had a negative experience in education. We failed them. We didn't catch them before they fell through the cracks. A recent study showed that 50% of Idaho children show up at kindergarten unprepared with the skills to learn how to read. If a child is not reading by 3rd grade in their grade level, if they're not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, and I know there are a lot of elementary teachers here who understand this, what happens after 3rd grade? You don't teach reading after 3rd grade because now what are you teaching? Content. So if you didn't learn how to read in those early years, how do you learn the content from that time forward? Children continue to move on to 5th grade, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th, 8th. By middle school, they're really struggling. Some of them learn coping skills to try to get through. But by 9th and 10th grade, what happens? They drop out. They drop out. And how do you make a living without that education? We're failing them. And it's not just a human rights issue or an education issue, it's an economic issue. We know that our prisons are filling rapidly, and we're continuing to spend more and more dollars on that. We need to stop and look where the priority for our resources should be in early childhood education. So those are our top 3 priorities. But what are my passions? Let me tell you about the CAPE that I want to put on education. CAPE, for those of you who are teachers. Number 1, and I've been teaching this my entire career, is civics. We have to get back to civics for kids. What does that mean? It means we teach children how to get along with one another. We teach them to have respect for one another. We teach them how to participate in their government. They learn about the Constitution. And I'm not talking about just spouting off, well, that's not the Constitution. You need to know the Constitution. Know what Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 is about. That necessary and proper clause is probably the most important thing there is in that document. Children need to know and understand that. I totally believe in the STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, but not at the expense of understanding how important participation in government is. Many of our problems today can be solved by bringing civics education into the classroom, and it doesn't even have to be additional class. Every single subject can be taught through a civics lens. That's the C. A, access. Access to equal opportunities. You are so fortunate to live in this community. You have extraordinary teachers. You have supportive parents. You have an academic excellence. That's not happening across the state. I know. I've been teaching in districts across the state. And when I first moved from my rural district of Orofino into the Treasure Valley and got into the Meridian system and later moved into the Boise system, I realized the inequality of opportunity in our state for kids. My kids in Orofino are not getting the same education as your kids here, nor those children in the Treasure Valley. That's not fair. Who's going to stand up for them? Who's going to tell that story? Their education shouldn't be determined by where they live. P, partnerships. I do not think I'm going to go in and solve all these problems by myself. But you know what I know how to do? I know how to collaborate and bring together the best, most important expertise across the state. I've lived all over the state. I know who people are that are movers and shakers in education, that are leaders in this field, and I want to bring them together. Because when we work together with business, with education leaders, with parents, with all different kinds of choice for education, it only benefits our children. So lots and lots of partnerships. That's what we need to bring out for kids. And finally, the E, again, early childhood education strengthens families. So you can see we have 3 important areas on which we need to improve, but the CAPE is the icing on the cake. When I served on the Governor's Task Force for Education Reform 5 years ago, we set a plan for 20 recommendations that would be implemented. They've been implemented slowly, and we're still not where we need to be in the 5th year. There's so much work to do. But there's nothing happening from this point forward. Where's the next 5-year plan? What's the vision to move into the 10 years of a child's education? That's why we need new leadership. And I need your help in making it happen. I hope that you will join me in working not only on this campaign, but once elected, you'll participate in telling the story of what our children need. Please follow us and help us to be champions for children. Thank you so much for having me.